Good morning. It is a rainy morning here on May 19th, 2019. This is Constitution Study Television. I'm your host, Douglas V. Gibbs. DouglasVGibbs.com, politicalpistachio.com. And the House of Representatives, which is currently dominated by the Democrat Party, recently voted in favor of the Equality Act. What is the Equality Act? The Equality Act is an attempt to criminalize anyone who dares stand against transgenderism, homosexuality. It tries to take the civil rights movement to all points of the spectrum. And what's interesting when it comes to transgender, in my opinion, is it's actually anti-woman. You're going to have men now pretending to be women. Female sports will be gone. But the Democrats would rather cater to this less than 1% of the population rather than women, because right now that's what gives them the image of being a party of standing up for the little guy. But that's not what this video is about. It is about the Equality Act and the idea of equality, identity politics, but it goes deeper than that. It's really ultimately about cultural Marxism. All right, according to the author David Truman, cultural Marxism is the ideological driver behind political correctness. And aren't we sick of political correctness? I can't count how many times I talk to members of the younger generation. I say, do you sometimes feel like you have to look over your shoulder before you say something nowadays? When I was a kid, we didn't have to. We didn't feel that way. Yeah, we said some messed up stuff. We said some good jokes, and we all laughed. Because we're all Americans, we're all different. That's the way it is, and and then we went out and we played baseball or whatever. Now, David Truman goes on to explain that after the Russian Revolution in 1919, the Bolsheviks founded Comintern, which is the Communist International, and it means fight by all available means. What it really meant was fight by all available means for the overthrow of the international bourgeoisie, which is, anyone who's not a part of believing in the social ownership of the means of production and ultimately a communitarian type of system for the creation of an international Soviet republic. Okay, the communists were looking at this as a worldwide endeavor. This was a global goal of theirs. And then it goes on to explain how what they realized was what it was in the way of ultimately doing what they wanted to do was, the opiate of the masses, Christianity. So they would need to de-Christianize the world in order to achieve the Marxist dream. So Marxism, socialism, communism, according to those involved from the very beginning, cannot fully take place, cannot fully become the society of the land until Christianity is out of the way. So the goal is to de-Christianize the world. And the article goes on to explain how a couple of Hungarian Marxist theorists worked to do that in Hungary. They did what they could to de-Christianize Hungary. And let me read this portion to you to help you understand what they did. By undermining firstly Christian sexual ethics among children, then the hated patriarchal family, and the church. They launched sex lectures in the schools and graphically instructed youth in free love or promiscuity. Starting to sound familiar? And sexual intercourse, while simultaneously encouraging them to deride and reject Christian moral ethics, monogamy, and parental and church authority. In 1923, Lukács established the Institution for Marxism in Frankfurt. You heard of the School of Frankfurt, right? The Frankfurt School? And this is what he said when he created the Frankfurt School. I saw the revolutionary destruction of society as the one and only solution. A worldwide overturning of values cannot take place without the annihilation of the old values and the creation of new ones by the revolutionaries. So the goal is to sweep away the old, bring in the new. The only way they can sweep away the old is to discredit the old and have everybody turn away from the old at every point. So that means anything Christian, anything about God, okay? So homosexuality stands against godliness. The mother-father, male-female, dynamic, that must be swept away, not only by destroying the family and marriage, but also by destroying gender. If there's no male and female, well, that's because male and female is what God created. So there must not be a male and female, and so on and so forth. So now the article goes on to explain that the Frankfurt School spawned critical theory. And it is the destructive criticism of Western culture. In other words, this is the list of what they wanted to destroy. Now, I know we're talking about the Equality Act. Notice how the Equality Act fits into this. The Equality Act, passed by the House, would normalize by law and make them a protected class by law, homosexuals, transgenders, and anybody else the Democrats decide to throw into the mix, and it would essentially start destroying the church from the inside out. It would make freedom of religious speech illegal, so on and so forth. Now, that said, let's get back to what I'm reading here. The Frankfurt School's list of things that need to be destroyed in order for a Marxist society to rise up. Once again, think about what the Democrats are doing, and then listen to this list. This is a list of what must be destroyed: Christianity, capitalism, authority, the family, patriarchy, morality, tradition, sexual restraint, loyalty, patriotism, nationalism, love of country, heredity, ethnocentrism, conservatism. No wonder they hate Trump so much. He represents all those things, as does conservatism, but he's a warrior for those things. They had us backpedaling before. Now there's a president who's taking the darts and willing to fight, the good fight. Now, it goes on to explain that the critical theory repeats over and over the mantra of the alleged Western evil. So this is what it's constantly arguing against now. Racism, sexism, colonialism, nationalism, homophobia, fascism, xenophobia, imperialism, and of course, religious bigotry, only applied to Christianity. Of course, Islam is exempt. Once again, going back to the Equality Act. The Equality Act is the next step in this Marxist theory, cultural Marxism. And the left will tell you, cultural Marxism doesn't exist. That it's a made-up construct that we just try to use, just like when we started talking about Saul Alinsky when Obama emerged, and that's a boogeyman they just pulled out of the... No, this is real stuff. Cultural Marxism is what's being used against the United States by the left, and this Equality Act is a very strong step towards wrapping up what they're trying to do. They wanted to do it with Hillary in office. Trump messed it all up by getting elected. Boy, talk about a Freudian slip there. That's why they hate him. He interrupted the process. They feel like they're almost there. Okay, let me continue to read. And I appreciate this article. Once again, it's freedomandheritage.org. The title of the article is "What is Cultural Marxism?" by David Truman. And it is probably the best article I have found on cultural Marxism, aside from many of the books I have. And that's the reason I'm reading quite a bit from it. I am giving David Truman as much of this accolades for his... Not accolades, what's the right word? I'm giving him credit for, having written this article. This is not just me talking. This is information I've grabbed from this article. Once again, I've got other books too. I've got, books on... I've got a stack of books that are just... on Marxism and what they've been trying to do. But anyway, so during the Second World War, article continues, the Frankfurt School relocated to various campuses in the United States. Let's stop there. University of Chicago, probably one of the leading campuses for the Frankfurt School. Where did Obama come from? University of Chicago. Or at least that's one of his connections. And in fact, they say he taught the Constitution there. Yeah, he lectured on how to use the 14th Amendment to create racial division. Right in line with the Frankfurt School list of things that need to be destroyed. In 1950, Theodor Adorn of the Frankfurt School proposed the idea of the authoritarian personality, claiming that Christianity, capitalism, and the traditional family create a character prone to racism and fascism. So because you're a Christian, you're prone to it, they're saying. Starting to sound familiar again? The Democrats are following the Frankfurt School, cultural Marxism, the recipe book set aside by the Bolsheviks, line by line. Continues, thus, anyone who upholds traditional moral values and institutions is both racist and fascist, and everyone raised in the traditions of God, family, patriotism, or free markets needs psychological help. I was watching Bill Maher the other day. I watched the opposition because I need to know what they're saying. And Bill Maher is one of the more interesting ones. And the moment you mention you're a Christian, there's something loose, there's something screwy going on, you're psychologically unstable, so on and so forth from his point of view. He's also fitting right into the cultural Marxist argument. They are such lemmings and they don't even realize it. The Frankfurt School was frustrated at the persistent lack of interest by the Western working class in revolt. The blue-collar Americans were raised in liberty. They recognized Marxism for what it was, even if they didn't recognize it specifically for what it was. In other words, deep down, they knew something was wrong. They knew it was antithetical to liberty. And so Americans, in general, rejected the idea. So it has taken 100 years, 50, and really about 70 years, if you want to go from this 1950 date, but really more than 100 years, because remember, the progressive era began in the 1880s here. And it culminated in the Federal Reserve Act, the 16th Amendment, which ultimately became the IRS and income tax, taking a voice away from the budget from the states, and the 17th Amendment, which moved us away from being a republic and towards a democracy by changing the U.S. Senate from appointed senators by the state legislatures to them being democratically voted in. Because the Marxists understand that democracy is the road to socialism. You change society, you attack Christianity, you convince society to reject God, to reject all the things that are associated with a godly society. And then all you need to do is get them to vote in the socialists through democracy. But the problem is we're a republic. So there are too many checks and balances. We're not a pure enough democracy. There's still one obstacle in their way, the Electoral College. And boy, I tell you what, the Democrat Party is working on what they can to get rid of that too. That's like the last vestige of protection against the excesses of democracy. The Frankfurt School was frustrated. The question was asked, who could substitute for the working class as the agent of revolution? Because the working class would not launch the Soviet Revolution, the Marxist Revolution here in America. So who could they get to launch that revolution? Well, groups that they could convince are marginalized. Black militants, feminists, homosexual militants, the asocial, the alienated, the third world revolutionaries represented by the mass murderer Che Guevara. I might throw Islam in there. Now, the author calls political correctness cultural terrorism. I like the term. Was to be waged against white, Christian, capitalist, heterosexual males, and they would be called racist, bigots, Nazis, homophobes, and Islamophobes. Victim groups were to be defended, gays, blacks, women, and now Muslims, as alleged victims of racism and genocide. And also, more recently, the environment being raped by white capitalists. Together, these constitute the politically correct coalition. That's from the article.
The Democrat Party, once again, is following line by line the recipe book by the cultural Marxists, the Frankfurt School. These victim groups are the basis of the gay studies, black studies, women's studies, peace and conflict studies, etc. departments now infesting universities along with the green left. None of these departments encourages genuine critical thought. They peddle only a one-sided agenda of destructive pessimism about Western culture. We now have the pessimism has gone so well for the left that we now have a generation, the millennials and younger, who are scared to death. The world's going to end in 10 years, according to them, or 12 years, according to AOC, because of global warming / climate change. You know, the Nazis have taken over the White House, you know, according to the left, and so on and so forth. And so they're freaking out. There's nothing to live for. The suicide rate among the younger has skyrocketed over this. This is what was going on in the 1970s. The turn on, tune in, drop out. Drop out of the establishment of society, so on and so forth. Now we are riddled with this kind of thinking throughout our universities, and what our universities are spitting out are good little Marxists. Socialism now, among the younger generation, is looked upon favorably, more than 50%. They use intimidation, and they're trying to suffocate public discourse. We cannot have a discussion anymore. You will be shouted down and you'll be silenced. I've had that happen to me a couple of times. We've seen it with, Milo there in Berkeley and Ann Coulter and so on and so forth. The advance, and I'm going to go back to the article. The advance of cultural Marxism has been hugely helped by the spread of post-modernist nihilist ideas, including the denial of absolute truth, denial of absolute standards, cultural, religious, and moral relativism, assertion that life is meaningless, tolerant non-judgmentalism, which means refusing to defend any standards, and deterministic view of life. Cultural Marxists teach that truth and morality are relative. Depends on what you believe. Depends on what fits your fancy. That the end justifies the means. The bedrock institutions of society are merely power relationships, like the corporations too. And that people's status and fortune in life is determined by class and gender, not by your hard work, not by your free will, not by free enterprise, not by your initiative, not by innovation, or your ability to take moral responsibility for your own life decisions. Or as Obama said, you didn't build that. Your success depends on the system, the collective, according to them. This promotes a victimhood mentality and encourages parasitic dependency. The social justice agenda brought by so many people from cultural Marxists is a smokescreen. When hardliners and their useful idiots talk in the schools and elsewhere about social justice, they're not teaching about free enterprise and capitalism and individual responsibility and all the things that made America and the English-speaking world, because that's where it all came from, because that's the Saxon system. Has nothing to do really with the fact that we speak English or you're white or whatever, but the Saxon system and Protestantism together created the Western civilization's dynamic of prosperity, free market capitalism, so on and so forth. It's because of the Saxon system. The Saxons believed in no one was above the law, in free will, make a free decision, laissez-faire, allowing the economy to take its own course, and so on and so forth. And this is considered bad by the cultural Marxists. So anyway, that's the end of that article, and I want to wrap it up with this. So we've got now the Equality Act, and the Equality Act carries a number of dangers with it. Now that we understand that it's cultural Marxism, the Equality Act lifts, elevates sexual orientation, gender identity to the protected class that, when it comes to federal anti-discrimination laws. In other words, it makes it no different than race, which I suppose to some people on the surface sounds, well, yeah, hey, give everybody equality. That's not what it's about. There's something deeper going on here. And in fact, there's a number of things that this Equality Act, using cultural Marxism, using what we just talked about, to really destroy the American system. Okay, first of all,
The Equality Act would penalize anybody for refusing to affirm, refusing to embrace sexual orientation, transgender, all that. What it does, it opens the door for other things that are considered a lifestyle as well. For example, pedophilia might be next, polygamy. Those are next. And this is going to affirm that and make it a crime for you to disagree with it, to say anything against it. This video, if this passes, will become illegal because I'm speaking out against these lifestyles, even if not directly. Remember the guy who refused to bake the gay cake? He'd really be in trouble. He's already lost his business and went bankrupt. He'd be doing some jail time once the Equality Act is in place. If the Equality Act goes into place, daring to stand against the homosexual agenda or the transgenderism or any of these other protected groups that the left is creating would be considered criminal and will land you in prison. Now, remember, in the Declaration of Independence, it talks about your rights. See, and this is the Equality Act. Says, our rights, to be equal, and the right to, be gay, and the right to be this. Your rights are defined in the Declaration quite interestingly, and it doesn't fit what the left is saying. The government is not there to guarantee your rights. The government is not there to define your rights. In the Declaration of Independence, it says life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Those are your rights. You don't have the right to be happy. You have the right to pursue it. You don't have the right to have a cake baked the way you want, but you have a right to pursue it. If that person's not going to bake it, find another baker. The next thing that this does is this also, the Equality Act would compel speech. You would only be allowed to speak favorably about the protected classes. If you don't, it could be a criminal act. And it goes even further. It's like when it comes to racism. A part of liberty is you have the freedom to be a racist. There shouldn't be a law against racism. And there kind of is, kind of isn't. But they're going to make it to the point where actual speech will become illegal. Freedom is it's like free will with God. Free will with God is you accept God, but you also have the free will to reject God. In liberty, you have the freedom to be like everybody else and agree or disagree. That's your freedom. So if you want to be a racist, bigoted, jerk, it's a free country. Be so. Now, you'll have to pay the consequences in society because no one will want to be around you because you're a jerk. But hey, you got the freedom. There's no law that can compel you not to be racist. That's what freedom's about. But this law would compel speech. That would force teachers to only say things that are favorable towards these lifestyles and these ideas that the left is putting out. And if you say, well, gosh, but my religious belief is, religious belief doesn't trump hate speech. Our rights are not supposed to be ranked. One doesn't trump another one or more important than the other. They're not supposed to interfere with each other. Hey, I have freedom to swing my arms. You have the right not to be punched in the nose. So I need to be responsible with my freedom to swing my arms. So, all right, be gay. But you have a responsibility not to allow that to interfere with other people's rights, such as religious rights. If someone wants to disagree with you and say, hey, sorry, buddy, I think you're living in sin. Hey, that's what a free country's all about. Deal with it. Suck it up. Quit being offended. Or don't be gay if you can't handle it. Also, a lot of your charities would be shut down if the Equality Act were to go through. Now, I don't think it's going to pass the Senate, and there's no way the president would sign it. There's no way they could override the veto. But just the very fact that the Democrats are pushing this and that it passed the House is the reason I'm talking about it. But a lot of your organizations, charities, who have the opinion that a child deserves a mother and father, for example, they'd have to shut down. They'd be illegal because same-sex couples also have the right to foster children regardless of the organization. It would shut down a lot of these charities. It would also allow biological males to continue to compete against girls in sports. I thought the Democrat Party was about women's rights and protecting women. Me Too movement and all that jazz. But yet we got some guy saying he's a chick in a MMA tournament beating the living crap out of a woman. It's a guy. Thicker bone density, stronger muscle tone. The fastest man in the world is a lot faster than the fastest woman in the world for a reason. We're built differently. But this transgender thing with the Equality Act would say, no, it's a free-for-all. Women's sports would be destroyed. And it would be used to coerce medical professionals into doing things that may be against their own conscience. I believe, for example, that taking a child and changing their quote-unquote gender is child abuse. Over 90% of persons who were confused about their gender when they were younger changed their mind once they reached 30. But yet we're going to perform a surgery on these children, and then it could lead to, this law could lead to more children being taken away from the parents. The parent says, hey, I don't believe my kid has a gender problem or shouldn't or would. I'm not going to allow that. Oh, well, then you're breaking the law because of the rights of the child. Remember when I talked about cultural Marxism? This is a way to force their system in place and to push Christianity out of the way. Your Christian beliefs are the enemy. Your Christian beliefs are a danger to what they want. Karl Marx called Christianity the opiate of the masses because as a Christian, you don't depend on government because you have God. You know what? God's got this. We'll make it through this tough situation. Well, who's going to depend on government if you have that attitude? So God must be erased. God must be eliminated from the picture for cultural Marxism to take over. The Equality Act would also increase and better enable sexual assault. You've got boys going into girls' locker rooms saying that they're girls. You've got a mixing that creates the opportunity for predators to take advantage of it with the bathrooms and the locker rooms and all of that. And if you try to stop them, well, you're discriminating because he feels like a woman at that moment. So the dangers that something like the Equality Act poses to our society are dangerous as it is. But then, going back to what we were talking about earlier, it is the very epitome of what cultural Marxism and the Frankfurt School is all about. Remember, the idea here is to destroy Christianity. To destroy Christianity, capitalism, authority, the family, the patriarchy, morality, tradition, sexual restraint, loyalty, patriotism, nationalism, heredity, ethnocentrism, and conservatism. It has to all be washed away, as I heard a song once say. So, rock song out there, oh, you got to wash it all away, and then who's going to come? They want some dictator, according to the song, to take over. Who is going to wash it all away? Well, they want this washed away because it's cultural Marxism. It's an undermining of the American system. It's a destruction of the Christian foundation of our very successful republic. We are under attack. This is not just a political disagreement. The sooner conservatives understand the left is waging political war, political warfare, and really spiritual warfare. Destroy the church, you destroy the society. Destroy the society, it becomes a Marxist society, a collectivistic system, and it will fail, and people will die, as happened under Stalin, as happened under Mao Zedong, as happened under Pol Pot, as happened in Venezuela and Cuba, as happened in the Eastern Bloc countries. Every single time, socialism, communism, collectivism, utopianism, communitarianism, communalism, redistribution of wealth, schemes of leveling, it's all the same stuff. It's been here since the dawn of time. Every time it has been put into place, people have died, either from starvation or being slaughtered, because dissent cannot be tolerated by those systems. I had a professor, history professor, Dr. O'Mara, explained to me, no, Doug, it's we're anti-statist, we're anti-authoritarian, and anti-violent. We're just want a communal system where where there's a social sharing of the means of production. Well, socialism may not on the surface be about totalitarianism and statism, but that is the natural result. Because what happens is there's going to be somebody, once you try to put this into place, who wants to aspire for more, wants to innovate, wants to rise above. And that can't be allowed in a system of quote-unquote equality. You're not allowed to be different in a system of equality. You're not allowed to follow your skills and your desires and your incentive-driven whatever. The Trumps of the world and the Steve Jobs of the world. They don't appear in those societies. So innovation stops, and the great minds that move society forward and make society prosperous are stopped before they can rise above everybody else, because they're greedy, they're profiteers, so on and so forth. We're in a war here, cultural Marxism. The Equality Act is only one of many attempts to put cultural Marxism into place, which in the end, it's all about destroying our Christian foundation. This is serious stuff, folks. Share this video. My name is Douglas V. Gibbs. I'm the author of 7 books. My last 2, The 7 Worst Constitutional Liars and A Promise of American Liberty, have done quite well. My first book, 25 Myths of the United States Constitution, is a must-read. Go to Amazon. Buy my books. Also, I've got a new bumper sticker out. It says the U.S. Constitution trumps socialism. Let's put it over here where you can see it. Send me $5. Donate $5 to my cause. I'll send you the bumper sticker. Make sure you send me an email to let me know that's what you did, just in case for some reason I don't see it. When you donate, there's going to be a box. There's going to be an option to put your address in. Put your address in. Then hit the box that you want to share that with Douglas V. Gibbs so that I know where to send the bumper sticker. $5 gets you the bumper sticker. If you want to help out this cause, don't stop at that $5. Hit the monthly give box, just $5 a month. I'm not asking for much. To help fund what's going on here, to help fund this process, to help fund the education of America, not just through these YouTube videos, but through my classes, my public speaking. I travel all over the state of California and would like to start traveling across the country. Radio program on KMET 1490 AM. In fact, right now we're short about $260 every quarter because we lost an advertiser. We need a new one. There's always funding needed. So go to the donate button, donate. If you donate at least $5, I'll give you a bumper sticker. Make sure you leave me your address. If you really want to help, also hit the monthly box. Make it a monthly donation. And another way you can help is subscribe. Actually, it's over here. So right about there. Hit the subscribe. There's a little bell next to subscribe for notifications. Hit that so you're notified when new videos come out. Share these videos with other people. This is important stuff. This is all about teaching you about the Constitution. Now, now, for those of you who watch this whole video, you say, well, wait a second, Doug, Constitution guy, you talked about this act. What does that have to do with the Constitution? You never mentioned the Constitution. I apologize. The Constitution is about being created equal and then running for wherever you got to go after that. And the federal government not being allowed to interfere. In other words, when it comes to the Constitution, the Equality Act is unconstitutional. There's no authority for the federal government to get involved in that way. Oh, Doug, 14th Amendment. No. That's not what the 14th Amendment says. It says that no state shall pass these laws, and then it'll be enforced by legislation from the Congress. That no state shall pass laws that treat people differently, special under the law. But wait a second. Is this law treating people special under the law? No state and the federal government are not allowed to pass this kind of law. It's giving special treatment to a group. It's illegal. It's unconstitutional. All right, we'll see you next time right here. Stay safe, stay patriotic, and as always, stay constitutional.